Well, welcome into a special episode of the Dairy Country podcast, where we are here powered by MSD Animal Health, talking about SenseHub Dairy, New Zealand's trusted all-in-one platform for smarter, more connected farming. From behaviour monitoring collars, automated drafting gates and milk sensors to young stock application. We're going to be covering this in more detail throughout this special episode, where we have three on the panel today. Two farmers and Laura, who is representing SenseHub Dairy. So really looking forward to unpacking around how SenseHub Dairy delivers real-time insights into health, fertility, rumination, and of course, helping you make those better decisions on farm. So you'd love to know a little bit more about who we have on this particular episode. Wonderful farmers. Joining us in the Taranaki is Ed Whiting, a forward-thinking dairy farmer who's reshaping the way we think about herd management on his family airport farm. Many of you may know in Taranaki. And Ed loves technology, a full suite of SenseHub Dairy to help with decision-making, milk monitoring, real-time data to make some smarter decisions. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story and your journey, Ed. Terry Swney is joining us from the West Coast, originally from Southland, running a high-performing West Coast dairy business, stepping up as a sharemilker this season and milking 635 cows, utilising SenseHub Dairy technology for the last 5 years. And Laura Christensen is joining us from SenseHub Dairy, who looks after the South Island sales team. And of course, after sales support is a huge part of embedding technology within your farm. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that with Laura as well. Alrighty, so let's get to meet our farmers a little bit more. We'll start in the north. Ed, could you give us a lay of the land around what airport farm, the size, the scale, the system you're running, so people have got the context?
Yeah, welcome. We farm in Taranaki, and we are a mixed farming operation. The largest part is actually broiler chickens, free-range broiler chickens, and we do about 3.5 million birds a year. But we also do dairy, and we are currently around about 400 cows, but we sort of milk about 350 at once. And we also rear around about 300 beef calves a year as well. Some black Herefords off the back of that. So that's what we are in Taranaki. Yeah, that's it. Us really.
Yeah. And Terry, you have just stepped into a share milking role. Tell us a little bit about your operation on the coast.
Yeah, just tried to step up this year, so we'll see how it goes. Milking 630 odd cows. Very low stocking rate there in the West Coast, pasture-based with a lot of imported feed on the shoulder of the seasons or when you don't see the sun for a few months. Yeah, nothing like Ed's farm, straight dairy and a few beef.
Okay, Ed, so when was it that you investigated the SenseHub technology? And can you explain about the suite of technology that you have on farm?
Yeah, we started using SenseHub, I think 7 years ago, and we put collars on our cows, and I sort of worked out a return on investment of roughly basically it was going to cost us $29 per cow per year at that time. And the main driver at the time was heat detection, but actually as it's evolved, it does heaps more for us as a business. Technology is a real key to what we do. It's the backbone and it's like the heart of everything that we do, from communication. We use a lot of communication tools across. We've got 14 full-time staff, and we use like a product called Slack that we integrate lots of technologies into, including SenseHub, Levno, and lots of other types of technologies. All comes into one entity for us. The technology is like our glue. And it makes the farm run and keeps everyone connected and everyone's up to date and makes our lives as easy as possible. I think that's probably what we do, really.
It's interesting you said there about heat detection. Terry, was that sort of similar for you in terms of that first step or foray into why you chose SenseHub for its accuracy?
Yeah, definitely. I've had it 5 years, or just on 5 years. This is our fifth mating now. And I actually hunted SenseHub down to come to the coast because they weren't over here at that stage. And the main driver was a mating failure the year before. And the biggest thing was the lost opportunity of standing there picking cows when you get 2 hours of sunshine to do your outside jobs, put the collars on and haven't looked back.
Ed, what's it like? You've got your heat detection when it comes to the other elements around things like animal health and rumination. Like, how are you utilizing that and how has it improved your life?
I mean, yeah, so SenseHub, we started off with heat detection, and as it's evolved, one of the next key things is the animal health. So it's about understanding. It's taken us a little while to do that, but now we really use it as a tool. As we're sort of like preempting health problems, so we sort of get signs, early signs before we can see it about cow problems, basically on feeding. And so health is a real critical part of of SenseHub. And I think that it's value for money. It covers the cost, covers the heat detection, and then you get sort of health, then you get these other benefits. It just keeps on going with it. But the next step is rumination. And so we fully feed our cows and we've really got it fine tuned, all our feeding regime. And we just monitor the rumination of cows 24/7, 365 days a year. And so whether they're dry or in milk, rumination to us is an eating time is just key. And so it just tells us what's happening. It knows that we've got the feed right at the right times for that lactation for that cow. And also for me, just the dashboard of just that 100%, anything below 98%, health rating across our herd is across all young stock, dry, milking, lactating cows. That's my dashboard. So anything that's dropping below 98%, I know we've got a problem somewhere. So we try and keep it around that 100% all the time. It's just like a real-time dashboard of your health and your stock and your milk and it's good like that. So, yeah.
And Ed, the fact that you are monitoring so much data, have you interconnected that to increase performance, more milk in the vat? Like, have you seen over time by tracking those
Yes.
metrics and
Yeah,
shift?
absolutely. So we're on the milk meters. And the cell count. That's quite new for us. Only into that a few months now, but we're using it in many different ways. But it's like that holistic view of that lactating cow, and in looking at the rumination, and we're just starting to see some really good insights, early insights, and how to use that. But there's a lot. For a lot of people. I think when you collar cows, I've got a collar on. It's like steps at a time to try and understand how it can help you and your farming system. And I think that it's just step by step you start integrating. And once you've got your heat detection sorted out, then you're on to rumination or health, and you're sort of like you're learning as you go along. And so what seems like a wall of information to start with, you just got to pick away at it and pick the important stuff and work your way through.
Mm.
We feel as though we've fully utilised that product now. It's like a real best value for money for us.
Mm. Terry, has that been similar for you on your journey around how, and talk us through how you've kind of taken it on board step by step?
Yeah, very similar to Ed, although we don't have the milk meters and stuff yet, so we're just collars and young stock. But yeah, very similar. You put the collars on for mating, then you realise how important they are in your health. And I'm like Ed, our biggest payback has been through health. And if you worry about that, the milk puts itself in the vat without sick cows and down cows and time saving.
I can follow on from that, Terry, because one of the key things we changed our feeding regime based on the data we're getting from SenseHub, and we've just gone through a spell of, because we carve in summer, autumn, spring, and we've just gone 18 months without a metabolic problem in our cows. 18 months. I almost pinch myself. We can't believe it. And that's just purely, it's not SenseHub doing that. It's actually, you can make changes and then you can use SenseHub as your measure to find out what's working and what isn't. And it's taken probably 3 years to get to that point to say, actually, we're on the money now with it and it works. But I think it's a tool that gives you an insight, and you just use it in many different ways to give you those, to be able to steer your dairy operation.
Yeah, we're similar, Ed. We've used it to change our feeding. The first thing I noticed after the first year of heat and started looking at the health and rumination is you can't hide from not feeding your cows properly, because it tells you every day, and you've got to change, like you say, to get that feeding right, and hopefully the feeding then fixes the animal health problems and it's a flow-on effect.
So, Ed, you've got the milk monitoring sensors in your herringbone shed, and Terry's looking, is that the next step? What do you love about it, and sort of what is that data kind of improved for Terry to be convinced to move into the next stage?
Good question. I think it's still early days for us, but we already know, milk meters in the Northern Hemisphere are quite common. And so they focus on a very much more efficient cow. So, and our operation is very much around that. Is in theory, we farm sort of 200 hectares, but we could have a lot more cows, but we don't do that. We focus on having more of a high performing cow and monitor a lot better. So the point being about the milk meters is that it's like an evolution, and it's starting to make decisions in the shed in terms of the lactation length of a cow, in terms of genetics. So this just now we're starting to make decisions about cows that we put a C-Mex straw to that might be $95, but we're looking at her lactation too and seeing, what is she doing? How many days has she been calving? What's her rumination level? And even though C-Mex says she's a really high index cow, it's almost like, well, what's she producing based on our feeding regime? And say, actually, that's a good cow. Yeah, we'll do her. And other ones we might actually say, nah, let's just put a Hereford in her. And she's not actually doing as well as we thought, as the index would say that she's doing. So it's those kind of things that I feel over time it's really going to help. And the next thing is just about it simplifies the shed. So when you're milking cows, it's a job, and really all the data from that milking is just being collected, automatically being drafted for heat or a collar problem or a health problem. You can milk in the shed. You don't have to not think, but it actually just helps anybody that's in that particular role, and allows people to focus on the important stuff, not making those decisions in the shed there and then. The system sorts that out.
Do you know, it's exciting around the evolution, and SenseHub is constantly innovating. You can see it every year. There's this compounding innovation happening. The exciting thing too is just around that milk quality data happening on individual cows in the shed, as opposed to waiting, till the truck comes and bits and pieces. And how do you think, Ed, that's going to just continuously evolve with those insights into things like fat and protein that, you might be able to interconnect with feeding?
Yeah, so I look at it as like you got a herd test morning and night, 365 days a year, and so that cows can be up and down, and I think we're starting to see that, whether it's on the data and the trends, is that if you did a herd test say 6 times a year, you're actually only seeing a very small snapshot of what that cow is, and it might be just an off day, it might be a wet day, and so some cows weather that and others don't, but your results come back and you might make a decision about that cow which is the wrong decision. Whereas actually, if you're seeing a real-time view, a continuous view of that cow over time, you say, actually, that's more of a true picture. Even heat has an effect on a milk yield. And if you did a herd test when cows are on heat, that changes that picture, because you can factor that into the whole picture. And we sort of are moving towards that individual cow farming. So we're really looking at every single cow, not blocks of, or mobs of cows or calving dates. It's actually, what can that cow do for us, and what's best for her, and could she carry on lactating longer, so do we need to mate her right now? It's that kind of decision making that we'll get to, and that in time that becomes more efficient, but it's sort of really interesting when you talk to some other farmers in different parts of the world. Some, like in the Netherlands, I was talking to one farmer, and they're trying to go from a 600 to a 700 day lactation across the herd, and it's like you're thinking, well, hang on, we're struggling. Most people are struggling to do 20 days. So it's quite a different. There's different systems, and certain cows can do different things. So it's probably just helps you create a farming system to suit you in your environment, or your conditions, or your lifestyle, or whatever you want, how you want to farm. You can mold it to that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Terry, we all know that a high-performing cow's set up right from rearing through to the right heifer replacements, and this young stock application that MSD's Animal Health SenseHubs has, you've been using quite a lot. Can you share kind of like how you're utilising that data for your heifer selection?
So we've just started with the young stock this season, this calving just been. So the data we are seeing, and I haven't got the data from all of it. Unfortunately, I run data flow collars and the young stock tags are on SenseHub, so we're changing over, but not a good time to do it now during mating. So we're stuck with what we've got. But what I have seen is the first calves really struggled this year. And looking back, we had no good colostrum to feed for a start because we don't have a selection of cows to pull colostrum from. That's the first thing we've noticed. And we can actually see it in the paddock. Those calves are probably 2 weeks behind the sort of 10-day younger calves when we had a pool of colostrum to take and bricks test and feed better colostrum to. So that would be the biggest gain I've seen so far. We're just about ready to start weaning, so it'll be interesting to see how that transition happens. And I think, Ed, you've probably seen a bit already on what happens with your young stock.
Yeah, we're using the young stock tags too, and that we've been on it alerts us to a problem with a calf at the same time before we can spot it, basically. And so that's been particularly helpful. If there's something going through the calf pens, it picks it up pretty quickly, and it's been phenomenally accurate like that. And we also have a remote block which we run some stock on. And we put tags in those. There's some beef and replacements in there, and we can see them. We've got a solar station out there, and we can see their rumination and their eating, and we know they're all healthy 24/7, which is really useful to have that. One of the things that we're just doing right now, we've put in automatic calf feeding in, and I've got some calves on tagged with the Allflex young stock tags on those feeders, and some that haven't been through that process. And I'm just evaluating that at the moment, because that I'm already seeing in the condition of the weight of the calf, there's some vast differences already. And the tags are telling me that. And it's just quite exciting, because it just means that you're on the money with doing the right kind of things. You can see big differences. So the tags are just helping you, give you another view about those young stock, and that just really helps.
Laura, I'm going to bring you in here because I think one of the questions farmers do have, particularly we're talking about this young stock application, is a lot of their young stock blocks runoffs aren't interconnected to the milking platform sometimes. And so how easy is it to set up and those scenarios like you'd explain on remote blocks and bits and pieces and putting that young stock into place?
Yeah, no, it's we are quite fortunate with MSD with the SenseHub system around how customizable it can be for farms. Everyone does things slightly different, so we actually have the ability to work through the likes of mains power situations as far as power sources for those sorts of scenarios, and then alternatively, if we are a little more remote or power sources and things aren't as easily accessible, we can use solar power and those sorts of components too. So, and location wise, we could be as far as a 3-hour drive away and use the likes of our mobile SIM cards technology to actually beam that data back through to your main system so that you've got that all in one place for viewing.
Do you have questions around connectivity if there is places that's patchy across a paddock and things like that? Like, how does that side of it work?
Yeah, like the devices themselves are designed to actually hold 24 hours worth of data on itself if it's out of read range from our antennas or our systems. So depending on what sort of process you've got around animals coming back to a yard or they're out in pasture grazing in the young stock application, as long as those animals come to within read range of one of those antenna within a 24-hour time frame, all of that data that they've got loaded in will then upload and alert through to any issues or anything like that. So yeah, just explaining that through with the client that we're talking to and what they want to achieve from the system, and we can build a system to suit what they're after.
Terry, you mentioned there earlier in your intro that you had to sort of beg, SenseHub to come to the coast. Has it been worth it with regards to their wonderful sales support? And you don't have to say nice things just because Laura's on the call, but, what's it been like, once you get it installed and the support that you need afterwards?
Yeah, definitely no complaints on the support. Before I went to SenseHub and sort of said, hey, I want collars, come to the coast, and they were obviously already planning it anyway. I looked around and talked to other people in the country, different parts, and I think every single one of them said the backup service is phenomenal. And we've seen that being pretty remote. We've had to come up with some creative ways to get some things done at times. But in saying that, I see a trainer on farm multiple times a year. Laura's a phone call away. Nothing's an issue, right from the trainer analysing data to the sales to the people with the propeller head techs behind the scenes, just making sure things tick away properly. I don't know, quite often I go to the shed and it'll pop up in the corner that someone's been on your system through the night, just checking things are right in the background. And we've only had one issue, and that was us leaving the gate open on the yard during mating and all the cows left with ours. So on the SenseHub side, no issues at all.
Ed, for your inquiring, curious brain in the world of technology, how are they like when you keep pushing them for new technology?
New things. It's awesome, really. I sort of don't know if I'm a farmer or a technologist, but I just love that, using technology to make the business more efficient, to make people's lives easier. But yeah, it's a great company to work with from that point of view. And I just, in my mind, I feel like they're the Apple of collars. So they're just a really solid company, well supported. You can get hold of a vet if you want, sales. If you got a report that you're trying to put together, that I'm only just saying this genuinely because I deal with a lot of different companies. Usually that person that you've got hold of has already created the report for you before they've come back to you and they say, look, we've just done it for you, here you go. And so it feels a real personable company. I use a lot of technology, and there's a lot out there where I get ghosted for a period of time. You just don't know what's going on. You're sort of like, no responses. I just don't get the same feeling from Sense. So there's people on the ground, there's people online support, can always pick up the phone. Yeah, I just find it, of all the companies who deal with it, it's probably one of the better ones from that point of view. And then you tend to know them all. And if I want to talk to someone that's on the bleeding edge of it, I can get hold of them, and it's a real honest conversation. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's like, yeah, we're looking at that, or no, we're not looking at that. And it's just like, okay, that's cool. And so it's just a very open, transparent company. So I find it good.
Yeah, I found that at field days, with their experts there as well. They're really genuinely getting hounded by farmers for new things, and they're working really hard. Laura, you'd be in the know on, the exciting evolution. Kind of like, what excites you the most around the direction of SenseHub, and what are you seeing on farm in South Island around the sort of expansion and the future of monitoring and data?
Yeah, like we sort of touched on earlier, heat detection seems to be the entry point as far as engaging with tech these days. We have seen that change quite a bit over the last 2 to 3 years. Obviously, like the guys have touched on, the health monitoring has become a real key part of that conversation with people looking to invest in technology. And the big change that we've seen sort of the last 12, 18 months, a bit like where Ed's ventured into, is that milk monitoring piece. We know what our cows are eating. We know that what we're feeding is having an impact, positive or negative. We've got our repro rates falling through well. So what is the next step to enhance our herd and enhance our cows? And back to that individual moment, is what we're doing having a positive impact on these girls at an individual moment? So the milk monitoring space has become very, very front and centre as far as conversations go forward. Touching on the young stock piece, that was a new commercial release for us in February. So having tags and calves for that health monitoring piece is also becoming front and centre. So knowing that the calves you are rearing have that best chance from the get-go, and they do move through into your herd as a, efficient, productive animal right the way through. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you very much to you all. We've had a really good yarn about all things SenseHub, and a real great update actually around some of the new innovations that have been released and will continue, I imagine, into 2026. There's, of course, a plethora of information on the website. The link will be in the description of this video and podcast for you to go exploring. But of course, the best place, as Ed and Terry have pointed out, is they're friendly people like Laura that are only a phone call away. The SenseHub Dairy sales specialists can come out on farm and actually understand your context and start to advise around those steps. And I've taken from this conversation is don't let the whole thing overwhelm you. There is a pathway of being able to onboard your farm and steps. But as we've also heard from Ed and Terry, the monitoring and the data can be transformational to make those incremental differences on your farm. So thank you very much to Laura, to Ed and Terry joining us on the special episode of Dairy Country.